Every single day, I see new anti-Chinese propaganda on this app. It's not getting more insidious, but it's getting more sneaky.
Why are the loudest voices always the most extreme?
The sentiment is always, China is copying the United States, and not simply that China has better business practices. Is China an evil communist regime or a leader of capitalism? You can't have both.
It's an ice cream cone from the Chinese chain Mixue Ice Cream and Tea that costs 40 cents in much of Asia. Customers buy about 700 million a year. But Mixue didn't just copy Costco's playbook. It took 3 of Costco's strategies and added some twists of its own. First, Mixue practices high-low pricing. It puts its ice cream at the top of the menu, followed by about 35 profitable items.
If you've ever tried Mixue, you know that this is just a lie. Their ice cream is 2 RMB and the other menu items are 8 to 15 RMB. If they're losing money on the ice cream and their other products are only 6 to 10 RMB more, how are they making money? How have they not gone out of business? How have they expanded all across the Pacific? It's just another reiteration of China's economy is going to collapse any day now, which is not happening.
Told us China was the enemy, but they never told us that we were copying them. China wasn't the threat, it was the blueprint. They don't fear authoritarianism, they want it. China lifted 800 million people out of poverty because they measured what mattered: water, power, food, health. They actually tracked welfare of their citizens and dignity. They built trust not from ideology, from infrastructure. In the US, we track profit, the markets, even as millions go hungry and are homeless, and those numbers are climbing daily. Now, Musk comes in with the American Party that represents the 80%. Are you going to fall for it? Because, come on. This is the man who said we have too much empathy. That's the problem with the world. We don't need another millionaire, billionaire blueprint. We need to measure people, their health, their security, their safety. Because what we measure is what we serve. If we keep tracking only capital, only profits, don't be surprised when more of your freedom disappears.
The headlines sound scary. Foreign banks are leaving China. Financial opening is over. But is that really the whole story? Let's dig in. Over the last 2 years, some global banks scaled back. They sold stakes, closed branches, and reduced exposure. Rising costs and tighter regulations made certain businesses less profitable. From the outside, it does look like a retreat. Take Citibank, for example. It sold its consumer banking business in China, or HSBC, which has trained operations in certain regions. These moves fuel the narrative that foreign banks are pulling out. But here's a twist. At the same time, others are doubling down. Goldman Sachs won approval to fully own its China security business. BlackRock launched a mutual fund in Shanghai. Alliance expanded insurance operations in China. So, while some are leaving, others are betting bigger. What's happening isn't collapse. It's rebalancing. Some banks see low margins and exit. Others see long-term opportunity and expand. And financial opening in China has never been a straight line. It's always been push and pull. Tighter rules in some areas, more access in others. So no, China's financial opening isn't dead. It's evolving. And the winners aren't the loudest headlines. They are the ones who know when to pull back and to push forward. I'm Eric. Follow for more raw inside perspective on China. I'll see you in the next video. Ciao.
Trump obviously didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize today, 1, because he's never solved a conflict in his life, and 2, because the submission deadline for this year's nominees was January 31st of this year, only 11 days after he took office, and he definitely hadn't done anything up to that point. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about why he's real mad at China about a decision that he doesn't understand. Very strange things are happening in China. They are becoming very hostile and sending letters to countries throughout the world that they want to impose export controls on each and every element of production having to do with rare earths, and virtually anything else they can think of, even if it's not manufactured in China. We'll stop there. Just a little background so you know how wrong he is on this already. There are 17 recognized rare earth minerals. China earlier this year put export restrictions on 7 of those, and then today they imposed an additional export restriction on 5 more of them. So that does equal up to 12 total. There are still 5 that they're not putting any export restrictions on. So when he says anything to do with rare earths, which again, he doesn't understand what that is at all, he doesn't know what he's talking about. We'll continue. No one has ever seen anything like this, but essentially it would clog the markets and make life very difficult for every country in the world, especially for China. We'll stop again. If you don't know, rare earth minerals are used for a bunch of technologies, computer chips, semiconductors, but also used in weapons. So China putting export controls on this is just saying that they're going to restrict how much they send to a country based on that country's intended use of the rare earth mineral. So they are not going to be hurt by this at all. In fact, they're going to have more tight controls over their distribution of something that can be used to make weapons that can be used against them. So from a national defense perspective, this is actually very beneficial to China. We can continue. We have been contacted by other countries who are extremely angry at this great trade hostility, which came out of nowhere. Our relationship with China over the past 6 months has been a very good one, thereby making this move on trade an even more surprising one. I have always felt that they've been lying in wait, and now, as usual, I have been proven right. I don't know what he's talking about when he says our relationship with China has been great over the past 6 months. In the past 6 months, we have had tariffs on China of 145%, and only through more negotiation have we got that down to 30%, which is still extremely high. And oh, by the way, that's still money you're paying. China doesn't pay that. That's money you pay to try and get less Chinese products shipped into the United States, which we're able to do so much because we're extremely wealthy, and it's beneficial to both countries for us to import from them because we don't have low-wage manufacturing jobs at the same level that China does. We tend to rely on services in this country for the mass amount of our GDP, which is still leading the world, which should show you that we should continue to focus on services and not go back to low-wage manufacturing. But again, he's just claiming that we've had this great relationship and this came out of nowhere, and he's proven himself right. But he's basing that on the fact that he's saying that they're now putting export restrictions on everything rare earth when they're only putting it on 12 of 17 rare earth minerals, and 7 of those they placed earlier this year. So this is not out of nowhere. This next section, you don't need to hear the whole thing. It's just a bunch of drivel, but he says China's holding the world captive and they're starting with magnets. I don't know what his obsession with magnets is. And then he says that they've amassed a monopoly position, but that the US has monopolies too, and that he just hasn't played that card yet because he didn't feel that he needed to yet until now. The next section, also, you don't need to hear the whole thing. I swear this thing is very long. He's saying that they sent a very detailed explanation of why it is, and he doesn't understand why President Xi is doing this, but that there's no longer a reason for him to speak with him, which does lead in the next section, which I will read. I was to meet with President Xi in 2 weeks at APEC in South Korea, but now there seems to be no reason to do so. The Chinese letters were especially inappropriate in that this was the day that, after 3,000 years of bedlam and fighting, there was peace in the Middle East. I wonder if that timing was coincidental. So from articles that I've read, these export controls aren't going to take place until December 1st of this year, so there is still plenty of reason for him to go and meet with President Xi. But again, he's just trying to increase hostility between countries because that's all he knows how to do, because he thinks that gives him more power domestically for him to intimidate these foreign countries. So that is what he's doing. And then this whole thing about him ending 3,000 years of unrest in the Middle East, a situation that he clearly does not understand and also has ended nothing, is just a very weird, odd statement for him to make. The next section, he just says if China doesn't stop this, he's going to have to counter it financially, and then says for every element that they have been able to monopolize, we have 2. Again, he says that it's every rare earth mineral, which is 17 of them. So what are the 34 that we have? Because our biggest exports are airplane parts and petroleum and oil. So I'm not sure what he's talking about there. He then goes on to say, I never thought it would come to this, but perhaps as with all things, the time has come. Ultimately, though potentially painful, it will be a very good thing in the end for the USA. One of the policies that we are calculating at this moment is a massive increase of tariffs on Chinese products coming in the United States of America. So again, because China has decided to bolster their national security, he's going to tax you more. That's all he's saying here. I mean, really, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And him even saying the only thing that may be potentially true is that this is going to be painful. It's going to be harder for us to manufacture weapons, to manufacture electronics, things like that without these rare earth minerals. And if he continues to be hostile to the countries and does not form some sort of relationship with China, then they're going to exclude us from the people that they're willing to export to, which will make it cost even more for us to get our hands on these materials, especially considering that China digs up 60% of all rare earth minerals and then also processes 90% of all rare earth minerals in the entire world. So they do actually have a monopoly, and we have nothing to counter this. And finally, he says, there are many other countermeasures that are likewise under serious consideration. Thank you for your attention to this matter, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. So just to summarize that whole thing, he doesn't know anything about rare earth minerals. He doesn't know about restrictions that China previously put in place. He doesn't know about restrictions that they're putting in place now. He thinks it all has to do with magnets. He says that we also have monopolies over all of these things. In fact, we have monopolies at a 2-to-1 rate to China. If they don't back down, we're going to have to reconsider. And if they don't reconsider, then he's going to tax you more. That's my summary of all of that nonsense.
Is China full of pollution, kidnappings? I get DMs like this almost every day. And guess what? In China, people ask me the same kind of stuff about the West. Do Americans really get shot in the streets? Do people in Paris seriously pee in public? It's funny, but also kind of sad, because both sides are stuck in half-truths and worst-case headlines. So, here is how I think about it. Step 1. Ask yourself, where is this info from? If it's not on BBC, CNN, NYT, or any legit outlet, maybe don't trust it. Example, days ago, when people online said Trump was dead, even the New York Times didn't touch it. Step 2, data larger than drama. People still say China equals pollution, but the facts. In 2005, Beijing had over 200 bad air days a year. Last year, just 6. It's not perfect, but it's not 2005 either. Step 3, stop only listening to one side. You have Google Translate now. No excuse to only read news that fits your bias. You want to understand a country? Read both fans and critics. Yes, China has pollution. Yes, there are kidnappings. Just like in many countries, the key is how often, how many. I have been to over 60 countries, and in terms of personal safety, China is one of the most comfortable. You can walk around at 1 a.m., no problem. But safety isn't the reason to visit China. The real reasons, the food, the history, the culture, safety is just the bonus. We have a saying in Chinese, 耳听为虚，眼见为实. What you hear can lie. What you see, that's more real. So, if you are unsure about China, my advice, book a ticket, walk the streets, talk to the people. You might be surprised. I'm Yuan, a Chinese founder and scholar unpacking how this country and world really works. Follow me for honest takes from someone who has lived, built, and studied both China and the world. Why are the loudest voices always the most extreme? When it comes to countries, it's either China is perfect or China is hopeless. And honestly, both are wrong. As a typical Chinese owner and startup founder, here is how I see it. Constructive criticism equals patriotism. If you point out problems with solutions in mind, you love your country. Doesn't matter if it's China, the US, or anywhere else. Blind praise or blind hate equals useless. Both should make you suspicious. I have met foreigners in China who praise everything. Sorry, I don't buy it. Usually, they have another agenda, and I hope China's government is smart enough to see through that. I have also seen Chinese who go abroad and bash China non-stop. Sure, they win claps in the West, but that's not objectively either. And some foreigners DM me saying, my country is 100% garbage. Come on, that's not real either. Every nation has flaws, every nation has strengths. In China's history, dynasties collapsed not when people complained too much, but when leaders only listened to praise. That's why I say, if you want to understand China, don't glorify it, don't demonize it, keep a balance. And I will do the same for your country. Tell me honestly, what does your country do well? I will be glad to hear it. Because progress doesn't come from extremes. It comes from learning what's the best from each other. I'm Yuan, a Chinese founder and scholar unpacking how this country and world really works. Follow me and check my bio page for more. Thank you.
I hope this is the right time to ask this question. For a Chinese watching this video, how do you feel about these headlines that always come up about your country, that do not portray your country the way it is, the way you know it should be? How do you feel about it? Do they get into you, or do you just flash it and let it go? Like, how do you feel as a Chinese?